right, listen up. This is A-Z, joined with Stevie P, coming at you with some Pod Scene Final Four action. We're going to be talking about Kentucky, the Whiskey Badgers, the Huskies, and of course, number one overall seed, Florida. Only number one seed left.
It's not surprising this day and age, to be honest with you.
I think it's surprising that you got a 7 and 8 seed going at it. I think that's a bit surprising.
Yeah, a 7 versus an 8 is surprising.
I mean, but not every year you get Kentucky, the preseason number one. They're coming in as the 8 seed. I mean, they haven't.
I mean,
they're supposed to be
Kentucky
awesome.
now versus Kentucky in September is just a completely different team. And
if Kentucky play like this all year, they'd be a 1 seed. I mean, there's no question about it. So, I mean, maybe there is a question about it, but
so let's open up with Kentucky, since that sounds like the way we're going here. First off, I think it needs to be said, this would be the lowest seed to win a national title since Nova in 1979, 8 seed, which Kentucky is.
Wildcats.
And I just think that speaks volume about how far they've come since, like you said, in September when they were the number one overall seed. I mean, they just had such an up and down regular season, and Calipari's got to get so much credit for getting them together, getting them confident, and getting them to the Final Four. I think a lot of the credit has to go to him, and he doesn't get a lot of credit a lot of the time. He gets bashed all throughout the media.
What was the first game that we realized that Kentucky early in the season?
The loss to Florida in the SEC championship game was the turning point for them. You know what it kind of reminded me of when the Patriots beat the Giants in Week 17, the year that the Patriots were undefeated. The Giants lost that game, but it was like something about it that you knew that they were going to go on a run after that, and that's what it kind of felt like with Kentucky, because they lose that game by 2 points.
Yeah, they lost by 1. They're down early and ended up coming back in the second half. But no, I mean, they won 2 big games against LSU and Georgia before that. I mean, they against 2 teams they had trouble with LSU in the regular season, then they killed them in the tournament. So,
Exactly. And LSU wasn't a pushover team. I know they didn't make the tournament, but they weren't
Johnny O.B. the third.
Yeah, exactly. And as much as the SEC wasn't great this year. I mean, it was very top heavy. They had the 2.
They're not good at all.
The 2 top teams were obviously. I mean, they're both in the Final Four.
Georgia finished with the same record as Kentucky.
Exactly.
We need to talk about that at all.
And they were one of the final bubble teams, Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably first 4, first 8 out, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Tennessee finished 4th, and we all know what happened with Tennessee. They played pretty good for an 11 seed playing game. So.
All right. Well, I think one thing we have to point out. I said it earlier. I thought Kentucky's run to the Final Four has been the most difficult in terms of the team they played. It hasn't been a cakewalk. They knocked off Wichita, Louisville, and then Michigan. All of them were pretty close games. I mean, they beat Michigan by 3, Louisville by 5, and Wichita by 3. So every game has been essentially a nail biter. I mean, they only beat Kansas State by 7.
Yeah,
they're any one of these games. This is what's so beautiful about it. Any one of these games could have went either way, and I mean, they could have been knocked out in the first round. We could have been talking about a completely different scenario here.
Yeah, I think if you add up the seeds that they beat, it's probably the lowest. I'm not gonna do that right now, but I'm just gonna assume it is because Connecticut is pretty down there, pretty low as well.
Connecticut is similar, but we think differently about a couple of the teams that.
But I mean, everyone kind of knew Villanova wasn't a real 2 seed anyway. So, I mean, that win wasn't that great. Iowa State didn't have Niang, and then they beat Michigan State, which was pretty impressive. I mean, their first game though, that overtime win over St. Joe's.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to Kentucky though, yeah, like you said, Kansas State. They had that game. I mean, they're ahead most of the way. Kansas State's a decent team, but it never really looked like they had a chance in that game. And then basically the next 3 games, you can consider if we had a top 10 list of games in the tournament, probably Kentucky's games against Wichita State, Louisville, and Michigan could be three of those in the top 10 list, just because all those games were awesome to watch. I mean, you couldn't go wrong. I mean, it was just good basketball, good fun to see.
Okay. I think we should focus on the game against Michigan. And the stat that stood out to me most, which honestly blew me away, Kentucky rebounded 17 of their 27 missed shots. 17 offensive rebounds on 27 missed shots. And it's not that I'm surprised that they dominated on the boards because they've been doing it all season, but 63% of their missed shots, they got second chance opportunities on. I mean, that's just backbreaking to a defense like Michigan, who didn't have an inside presence as it is. And when they weren't hitting their outside shots, Kentucky wins the game. I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this game, if you're looking at it beforehand, if you knew that Kentucky was going to have a better percentage from three than Michigan, then you got to think there's no way, Michigan could win the game.
No chance. Absolutely no chance. That was how Michigan's been doing it all year. And I mean, they went to the Elite Eight. Let's not sticker at what they've done, but when it came down to it, when they couldn't do what they do best, they didn't have a second alternative.
Yeah, obviously a guy like McGarry would have helped Michigan.
Oh, absolutely,
situation.
absolutely.
I mean, you're dealing with Morgan and Horford, and once one of those guys gets into foul trouble or they're playing stupid, they bring in Max Bielfeldt, and he's played very sparse minutes.
Cannot play with the size of Kentucky's guards.
I mean, it's not like they would have had an easy time anyways against the size of Kentucky. I mean, you got a guy like Marcus Lee who barely played throughout the year for Kentucky. He comes in, gets minutes because Cauley Stein's out, and Marcus Lee comes in. He played great, 10 points, 8 boards, 15 minutes of work, and this guy barely played throughout the year. So, I mean, you got that kind of thing for Kentucky, and it's just not easy to handle.
And to add to that, you lose essentially your best defensive post player in Willie Cauley-Stein, who, if you want to compare him to someone in the NBA, I think Tyson Chandler is a pretty fair comparison in terms of what he provides for Kentucky. In that he's not a great offensive player, but he was
somewhat
good rebounder and a shot blocker. Maybe not as lengthy, but he's a 7-footer. And just to lose him and then replace him with another 7-footer in Dakari Johnson, I mean, not many teams can do that. And that's why Kentucky is Kentucky, because they bring in these freshmen who are NBA talent, and a lot of them sit on the bench.
That's what happened with Marcus Lee. I mean, this guy was a freshman as well, and look what he played. He played 1 minute in the previous 3 games of the tournament, and then he comes in and just dominates Michigan.
Another reason why Calipari deserves respect and deserves credit for this run. So when we look at Kentucky in the Final Four, they're probably not going to run too long of a rotation, probably 7 deep. Now that Willie Cauley-Stein's 100% out, I think you're looking at 7, 8 guys they're probably going to play, and all of them are freshmen.
Yeah, I mean, they just got to – everyone has problems with their size. They're one of the best rebounding teams out there. They got big guards. They got Randall. They got Johnson, Poitras, Lee. I mean, their whole team is just huge, which comes into play on both ends. They're getting offensive rebounds, and then they're limiting teams from getting offensive rebounds. Then when you have guards like Harrison, the Harrison twins, you got James Young. All those guys are 6'6".
Mm-hmm.
And when they're going against Wisconsin. Wisconsin has, I think, all 3 of their starting guards. They're all 6'3" or under.
All under 6'3".
And, I mean, you just don't see that every day. I mean, Trayvon Jackson, he's going to have a 6'6" guy on him. I mean, I'm not saying he can't handle it, but he doesn't get that matchup every day.
No, absolutely not. And I think
it's a little different than playing like a Mike Giselle or something from Iowa in the Big Ten.
Exactly. And another thing, too, is when you have these freshmen and they don't have any experience whatsoever, when you're not making outside shots, when things aren't working like that, you could return to that size and use it to your advantage. It's so much simpler to score on the inside and do those types of things than it is to shoot threes all day.
Yeah, the funny thing is that their outside shot actually helped against Michigan.
No, absolutely. It clears things up down
Yeah.
low, but when all else fails, they could return to that banging in down low formula that's been working for them, and you don't have to worry about the outside shot falling.
Yeah, it was just pretty funny how it worked out because Aaron Harrison he didn't make a shot in the first half,
God.
and all of a sudden he hits 4 threes in the second half. Has a ridiculous
Well, those two have just
shot
taken their,
over.
those
Karis
two have
LeVert.
played very well in this tournament, and they've taken their game. I think they've have to receive some credit too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
and they're going to be monumental in their matchups against. I mean, like you said before, you got Bruss 6'1", Jackson 6'2", Gasser 6'3", and Bronson off the bench at 6'3". I mean, these two are 6'6". You know, they have 4 or 5 inches on most of these guys and 20 pounds. I mean, what do you expect to happen?
Especially for the shooters.
Especially for the shooters
that Wisconsin has. I mean, they build a lot of what they do from shooting. All five of their starters, they can shoot. And when you have length like that on the perimeter, it's harder to get shots off. I mean, you can't just pull up for threes against such size on the perimeter. I mean, I think Michigan saw that when they shot, the worst shooting game of the tournament for them. They're 7 of 18. I mean, 7 of 18 is not bad, but it was still the worst shooting game of the tournament for Michigan. I mean, they just found that out. Stauskas had a rough game as well, 2 of 7 from 3. So I mean, and Stauskas, I mean, he's 6'6" too, so it's not like
he posed more of a matchup problem for Kentucky than these kids will on Wisconsin. I mean,
Wisconsin's they're gonna have to do something because Kaminsky is gonna be all the focus after what he's been able to do. You got to think Kentucky's not going to allow him to have open 3-point looks.
Okay.
I think, so if he does get open 3-point looks, someone's doing a bad job on Kentucky, and Calipari's going to pull him. So, I mean, I think that's how it's going to go.
So we could pretty much agree that the only guys that are going to see the court for Kentucky are going to be the Harrison twins, Young, Poitras, Randall, Takari Johnson.
Yeah, Marcus Lee,
and
Dominique Hawkins.
Hawkins
is playing a little more last couple of games.
But Hawkins and Lee are not going to crack the 10 to 12 minute mark. Maybe 15 minutes for Lee. Hawkins will probably be.
Yeah, I mean, it depends really. It depends how the game goes, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if Lee comes in and plays awesome like he did last game, then he's going to see minutes. And when you give size like that, Marcus Lee's probably going to be matched up with someone like Nigel Hayes coming off the bench for Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Lee or
Poitras will be on someone like Hayes, and then it depends like what they can do on the defensive end. Because I'm sure Wisconsin, they're going to bring in Dukin as well off their bench because he's one of their bigger guys, and they're going to need some size as well. But
if Kentucky shoots 7 of 11 from 3 like they did against Michigan, Wisconsin's not beating them, and it's.
Is there any chance Wisconsin wins the rebounding battle?
No chance at all that they win the rebounding battle. And if they do, then that we'll be talking about this on Monday. That's how Wisconsin won the game.
It's going to be.
I mean, who is out rebounding Takari Johnson and Julius Randle? It's not going to be Kaminsky, who's not a great rebounder for 7 feet tall, and it's not going to be Sam Decker, who's got.
He's an okay rebounder.
He's an okay rebounder, about 6.5 a game on the year. But he also didn't play monster minutes throughout the year, Kaminsky. I think some people are forgetting that. He was under 30 minutes a game. But
you could compare it to not exactly of how he's played, to what Mitch McGary did last year. Like, he wasn't really this great player throughout the year. I mean, Kaminsky had this 40-point game back in November or December or whatever.
Okay.
But, I mean, he was never really this consistent guy that he was always going to be a threat. I mean, playing in the Big Ten, he had up and down games, but it wasn't like teams were game planning against him.
Mm-hmm.
But now, I mean, that's basically all it is.
He's their guy now. Mm-hmm. He is their leader on the court, off the court. He They go with him. They go as he goes. And if Kentucky can take him out of the game, that's going to be the big question. Who's going to step up? Now we're moving on to
Whiskey.
when you talk about Wisconsin, everything starts and finishes with Kaminsky. But
Frank the Tank.
I mean, what he's done the first 4 games of this tournament have been ridiculous. And if they go to the finals and win it, he's the tournament MVP, hands down. But let's start with the guards. Let me ask you a couple questions about these guards real quick here before we get started on Kaminsky, because they are going to have an assignment or a matchup that they probably haven't really had at all this year in terms of just physical talent and size. Brust is their backcourt leader, I would say. He's
Trayvon Jackson runs the show at PG.
Yeah, no, I understand he runs the show at PG. But I mean, Brust is the only senior on this team that plays significant minutes, which is actually pretty shocking if you think about it. But he's going to be guarding a guy like Aaron Harrison, who he's never had to guard during the regular season or even up to this point in the tournament. So how does Bo Ryan avoid him getting in these one-on-one matchups with one of the Harrison twins throughout the night?
He's going to trust him. He's going to trust his guys.
See, trust doesn't do it
Bo
for
Ryan's
me.
not playing zone defense
Trust isn't
against anyone.
I know he's not going to play his own defense, but do they have the length? I mean, on paper, you just have to give the backcourt advantage to Kentucky, because I just don't see how Brust, how Gasser, Koenig, I mean, any of these guys.
Trayvon.
Yeah, Trayvon. He's only 6'2", though. How is he disrupting?
I think height is a factor, but I think you're putting too much into height.
Okay.
Just because a guy's tall doesn't mean.
No.
What about on the other end? I mean, these Wisconsin guys, they're going to be quicker. Smaller guys are quicker.
I don't.
They're going to be a little more.
Yeah, they might be a little quicker, but they're not nearly as athletic as those two.
And I mean, it's not like we're going to have the Kentucky guys posting up these Wisconsin guys down low.
No.
It's not always easy being a few inches taller than the guy that's guarding you, unless you're posting them up. I mean,
but when you
got a smaller guy, quick hands on you, it's not the easiest play on them.
But these Wisconsin guys, I mean, their game is going to be playing outside. A lot of their game is going to be played on the outside. So when you have two guys who are 6'6", who could lay off you a little bit and get their hands up and still just disrupt the shot, that's pretty important.
Yeah, I mean,
it gives them a little bit of flexibility.
It's definitely a problem, but I mean, these guys, they're experienced guards. They played in the Big Ten. They play in Big Ten basketball. It's not like they're just all of a sudden they're going to be like, oh gosh, these guys are a few inches taller than us. We have no idea what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these guys are
fair. Psychologically, it's not going to affect them.
I mean,
physically,
it's obviously going to be tough. It will be tough. There's no question, but we can't put too much into it.
So we mentioned Brust and Jackson in the backcourt. That's pretty much your 1-2 right there. You're going to have a guy like Koenig coming off the bench for about 10-15 minutes, and you're going to have Nigel Hayes coming off the bench to probably sub in for Decker. And after that, you're not going to see much else from Wisconsin.
They switch up their lineups.
Yeah. I
mean, Decker is he's cemented. He averages 30 minutes a game, but like a guy like Kaminsky, he'll get time with it's going to be tough, but it's going to be Hayes and Decker at the 4 and 5. So maybe at that point, I think they're going to switch up on Randall.
Okay.
First off, they're not going to just put Decker or Hayes on him. I think they're going to switch up. In this situation I mentioned with Randall and Poitras and Lee, with that rotation in there when Johnson's on the bench, I think they're going to mix up. Give Kaminsky some time on Randall.
Okay.
Because you can't keep giving Randall the same looks.
No.
Decker's going to start on him. It's going to be incredibly hard for Decker. They're obviously going to help out.
That's my X Factor matchup. I know you think that Decker
I mean, they're going to game plan for this.
I don't like that matchup at all. I don't like the idea you put a much smaller guy, not much smaller, 30 pounds. That's all you have to know. He's 30 pounds less than Randall. And Randall's a big physical player. He's not going to be, jab stepping on the outside, taking jump shots, and that's all Decker's have to worry about. He's going to be backing it down low all day, and you're not going to want Kaminsky coming over helping out too much because then you got to worry about foul trouble with him. And if he is out of the game, then for a significant period of time, then forget about it.
Yeah, I know. I underestimated Decker going against Aaron Gordon and Corey Jefferson. I mean, he held his ground, but Randall's a different.
You know how I feel about Aaron Gordon.
I know Randall is different, but still, Decker has the experience of going against, the bigger. I mean, like I said about the guards.
Like a Payne. But even then, I think Randall is just a different. He is a true NBA style post player. Like a Zach Randolph.
Yeah, he's going to be tough. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
But Wisconsin's not going to change up their lineup. They're not going to kick Decker out of there. But then look on the other end. Randall is on Decker. You think Randall can keep up with Decker, though? Decker's pretty shifty.
You're absolutely right. It works both ways.
Decker is a great shooter, and the thing about him, he doesn't. I mean, lately, he is a guy that can score a lot. He is a guy that can be, Wisconsin's leading scorer. But he's taken kind of a back seat with Kaminsky taking over, and I think this with Kentucky, I think giving more attention to Kaminsky, I think this might be a game where Decker needs to do a little more for Wisconsin.
Okay.
I think he can if he's getting matched up with a guy like Randall.
Yeah. So let me ask you this one last question before we give our predictions. James Young, we haven't spoke about him much. Freshman,
Jimmy,
6'6", small forward, second leading scorer on Kentucky this year. He's obviously an integral part of what they do. Who does he get matched up in this game? And now that you say Decker is going to be on Randall, I have to think they're probably going to go with a combination of Gasser, Koenig off the bench. I mean,
it's probably going to be Gasser on James Young.
Okay. That's a matchup I like for James Young, to be honest with you. He's not getting much attention right now because the Harrison twins have played so well.
It's about every matchup, though, that just because of Kentucky's size,
I think that's the storyline here. That's how they've gotten to where they are right now. Physical size. That's how they're doing it right now.
Yeah, I mean
look at
Gasser.
They shot 43 of their 58 shots came in within the paint against Michigan. I mean that's unheard of.
They're going to do that again. That's what they're going to aim to
do
again.
People wonder why teams like Duke and Michigan and these 3-point shooting teams they sometimes leave early in the tournaments because if they're not making threes, they have nowhere else to go. A team like Kentucky doesn't shoot many threes.
It's kind of what Wisconsin used to be: shoot threes and play tough defense.
Yeah, but it doesn't work. You can't make consistently long runs in tournaments when all you do is rely on the three. It's not. The odds are against you, in my opinion.
And Wisconsin's leaned away from that this year. I mean, that's
absolutely. And now look where they are. Bo Ryan adjusted his game, and look where they are. Not his game, but his game plan at least.
All right, so enough of the matchup talk. We talked way too much about these teams. Let's
You're blue in the face.
Let's get our predictions in. And first off, let me read the lines here. The Kentucky line's been floating around 1 to 2 point favorites,
which makes sense.
Favor the Wildcats, and the over/under is about 139,
which also makes sense.
Well, I mean, of course they make sense. Vegas is setting it, so I think it should make sense. If it didn't make sense, then I don't know what to say about that. But Stevie P, what's your prediction?
Talent wins out. Size wins out. I like the run Kentucky's on a little bit better than the run Wisconsin's on. I think Calipari game plans to get Kaminsky either in foul trouble early. I think that's something to watch big early, is if he tries to get situations in which Randall is going straight up with Kaminsky. I think that's going to be an important thing to watch early on in this game. Also, I don't think Wisconsin has enough guys on the outside to hit big shots to win this game, and I think Kentucky takes them down 76-68.
76-68.
Well, some points. There's going to be some points scored in this game.
I think it's gonna depend on what Wisconsin's doing, how they're shooting. They got a lot of shooters, but if they're not shooting well, if they're having trouble with the length and size of Kentucky, such as Michigan did, then they're not going to win. And are they going to be able to out rebound Kentucky? I don't think so. And like you said, I mean, I don't know how they're going to deal with Randall. And I mean, if Kentucky's played really well, if they've been hitting their shots in the tournament.
Mm.
If they're hitting their shots again, there's no chance. So I got to go with Kentucky as well. And the score is going to be 68-63.
Okay.
Wildcats.
We're not too far off. So we're pretty much in the same boat. I mean, you think maybe a little more defensive, but we're pretty much on the same page.